Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we are diving deep into the microscopic world inside our own bodies. We're going to tackle a huge question. How do medicines actually know what to do? Where to go, what to fix? Well, the answer is all about this incredible process of molecular communication. So let's get right into it and explore the science.
Seriously, have you ever thought about this? It really does seem like magic. You swallow a pill for a headache and somehow it doesn't get lost. It hones in on that pain. But you guessed it, it's not magic. It's this beautiful, super intricate science.
All right, so let's start with the very first principle. Drugs are not just floating around randomly in your bloodstream hoping for the best. Nope, they are on a mission. They're basically looking for a very specific partner to talk to. You can think of it like a secret handshake, one that only the right molecule knows.
And that specific partner, that's what we call a receptor. The receptor is the absolute hero of our story today. It's this large molecule, usually a protein, that's either on the surface of a cell or floating around inside it. It's basically a docking station, just waiting for the right chemical key, our drug, to come along.
Okay, so take a look at this. This shows you exactly what happens. The drug molecule, which scientists call a ligand, is moving toward that inactive receptor. When it finds its perfect match and binds, it's literally like flicking a switch. Bam! The receptor goes from inactive to active, and that sends a signal deep inside the cell, kicking off a chain reaction that gives us the effect we're looking for.
Now, our understanding of all this didn't just pop up overnight. Oh no, it took a long time to figure out. So let's kind of take a trip back in time and look at the very first big theory that tried to explain this amazing interaction. You can see that our thinking has been sharpened over decades. It really all kicked off back in 1934 with a guy named Clark and his groundbreaking occupation theory. Then, over the next couple of decades, other scientists came along and tweaked it before Koshland totally changed the game in 1958. Let's start with that first big idea from Clark.
This is the heart of it right here. This is Clark's occupation theory, and you'll often hear it called the lock and key model. The idea was simple but brilliant. A drug molecule is the key, and the receptor is the lock. The key has a very specific shape that lets it fit perfectly. And the more locks you fill with keys, the bigger the effect you get.
So the rules he came up with were really straightforward. You want a stronger response? Well, you need more drug molecules to occupy more receptors. Simple. To get 100% full-blown response, every single receptor has to be occupied. And, just as critical, the moment the drug unbinds, the key leaves the lock, the effect stops. It was all very neat and tidy. And this is what the theory looks like in its simplest form. You've got D for the drug and R for the receptor. They come together to form the DR complex, and it's the creation of that complex that leads to the response. Super clean, super logical, and honestly, this was the foundation of pharmacology for a really long time. But as science got better and our tools got sharper, we realized that the whole lock and key idea was maybe a little too rigid. The reality is much more dynamic, much more flexible. It's less like a solid key in a metal lock and, well, more like a hand sliding into a glove. This slide just lays it out perfectly. On the left, you've got the old way of thinking, the rigid lock and key, where the receptor is just this static thing waiting. But then on the right, you have Daniel Koshland's induced fit theory from 1958. And he suggested, no, the receptor is flexible. The drug doesn't just slot in, the act of binding actually causes both of them to change shape, to mold to each other. I just love this phrase, mutual plastic molding. It's not a one-way street, The receptor changes a bit to better fit the drug, and the drug might even shift its own shape to get a tighter grip. It's this dynamic change, this perfect little hug between the two molecules that really fires up the receptor and gives us the effect. This idea was a huge leap forward. Okay, so we get how drugs bind, but what happens after they bind? Well, it turns out not all drugs that fit the same receptor do the same thing. Some keys turn the lock all the way, some only turn it a little bit, and some, believe it or not, can actually turn it backward. This graph shows it so well. A full agonist is a drug that binds and slams the accelerator, producing the maximum possible response. It's like flipping a light switch all the way on. But a partial agonist, it binds to the same spot, but it can never produce that 100% effect, no matter how much of it you use. It's a dimmer switch. And why would you want a dimmer switch? Well, sometimes full power is just too much. Partial agonists are great when you want to gently nudge a system, not blast it. And this is where it gets really wild. Meet the inverse agonist.
So it turns out some receptors are a little bit active all the time, just humming along at a low level, even with no drug around. An inverse agonist comes in, binds to that receptor, and not only blocks other things from binding, but it actively shuts down that baseline activity. It forces the system to be even quieter than normal. It's amazing.
And what happens when you take two drugs together? Well, sometimes their effects just add up. That's called summation. 1 + 1 = 2. Pretty simple. But other times you get synergism. That's when the two drugs work together to amplify each other's effects. The combined result is way more powerful than you'd expect. It's like 1 + 1 suddenly equals 4.
So, we've talked a lot about receptors, and for good reason, they're the most common target for drugs. But they're not the only players in the game. Let's zoom out a little bit and look at the other major ways drugs get their work done inside our bodies.
Okay, so here's the big picture. Most drugs we use target one of these 4 types of proteins. We've got our receptors, which we know all about, but drugs can also go after enzymes, which are like the little workers that speed up chemical reactions. Then there are ion channels, which are basically tiny gates in our cells. And finally, transporters, which are like little ferry boats moving molecules around. Here's a great example of drugs that target enzymes. The basic idea is simple. An enzyme has a specific job to do, and a drug can be designed to physically get in the way and block it. A classic example is captopril. It's a blood pressure medication. It works by blocking an enzyme that's involved in raising blood pressure. By putting up that roadblock, it helps keep blood pressure down. And then you have drugs that target ion channels. These channels are basically the gates that control all the electrical signals in our cells, especially in our nerves and muscles. So a drug can act as a blocker, just plugging up the channel. Or it can be an opener, forcing it to stay open. Or it can be a modulator, which is more subtle. It just kind of changes how easily the gate swings open or shut. It's an incredibly precise way to control a cell's activity. So as we start to wrap this up, it becomes really clear that understanding these tiny molecular mechanisms isn't just some boring science stuff. It is the absolute bedrock of modern medicine. Literally every single medicine you might have in your cabinet exists because scientists figured out how to design a molecule that could target one of these specific components in our cells. We've gone on quite a journey, right? From that simple idea of a lock and key to the much more complex and elegant handshake of the induced fit model. And it's this deep understanding that lets us design smarter, safer, and more effective drugs. But it leaves us with this huge, fascinating question to think about. As our knowledge gets even more precise, what will the medicines of tomorrow actually look like? What will we be able to do?